Now, live from Studio 550, this is The McGraw Show on KTRS.
Larry Connors here with you, and my guest coming up now is Fred Fleitz, former CIA intelligence officer, also the editor of LIGNET. That's the Langley Intelligence Group Network. Fred often joining me on Larry Connors USA. And Fred, thanks for joining us early this morning.
Good morning, Larry.
First of all, when I look at this Bowie Bergdahl case again, and all the backstepping we saw from the Pentagon this week after word came out on Fox News and a couple other sources that Bergdahl was about to be charged with desertion, and all of a sudden the Pentagon is backing up, saying no decisions made. We're not going to be pressured into a decision. What's your take behind the scenes?
You know, I look at the Bergdahl case, and I hear a lot of experts in Washington saying that, you know, we shouldn't have traded for him, that he was a traitor. I don't know whether he was a traitor or not. I sort of look at him as a lost soul who shouldn't have been in the Army in the first place, and he may have wandered off. And I frankly didn't have a problem trading someone for him. I do have a problem with the fact that we obviously did a deal with terrorists, and we're pretending that we didn't.
Well, now that's a point. You shocked me for a moment. You said you didn't have a problem with trading someone for him, but we did trade 5 from Gitmo, 5 of the mid to top level Taliban operatives. So that you are opposed to, correct?
You know, I'm not happy that we did that, Larry, but I remember that a number of years ago that the Israelis traded 1,000 Palestinian prisoners for one Israeli soldier. And I mean, it looks like there's probably going to be a trade soon where we're going to trade a suicide bomber, not us, but a suicide bomber will be traded by Jordan to free someone from ISIS. I think there's difficult decisions that states have to make sometime. And this Taliban thing was supposed to be was supposed to help set up a transition of government in Afghanistan. I think the prospects of that happening, I think, are pretty dim. But I mean, I understand there's a rationale to it. I'm not sure I agree with it.
Well, the other point is, if we say we're not going to negotiate, a lot of folks say that might mean money. This is a negotiation. This is clearly a negotiation. That at least one of the 5 Taliban released are getting re-involved with activities on the field to possibly join insurgents against us.
That's right. I'm basically saying that sometimes we do negotiate. I mean, we negotiate with Cuba to get the former AID guy out of prison. We clearly negotiated with the Taliban. Our allies have negotiated with terrorists. I don't think it is a policy that we should advertise. I don't think we, as a matter of principle, should do this. But I think sometimes there are some practical considerations.
I guess the line is, I mean, if we had released 5 low-level guys, if they went back to the field, so be it. But these were mid to top level. I don't know if they asked for them by name. I have not heard the backstory on that. I don't know if you have or not. But the 5 we released appeared to be, some of the worst we could have released.
That's right. I think that they were asked for by name, and it was asked for by the Taliban because we were trying to negotiate a way out of Afghanistan. And I have to say that some type of trade may be okay, but I think with these guys, there were a lot of problems.
We're talking to Fred Fleitz. He is a former CIA operative and also the managing editor of LIGNET, the Langley Intelligence Group Network, a frequent guest on Larry Connors USA from 9 to midnight. Fred, one other question, too, along this line is that if this is going to be the beginning of a policy, and of course the push is still to shut down Gitmo, to clear it out, and we keep hearing that if we close it, all these Islamic terrorists will cease and desist and decide, well, the U.S. is a kinder, gentler nation, and so we won't do anything else.
Yeah, the administration is claiming that Gitmo was driving radical Islam. Well, Larry, I seem to remember that there were attacks by Al-Qaeda against the United States before Gitmo was being used to house prisoners.
Yep.
I mean, in the 1990s. The USS Cole, the first World Trade Center bombing the attack on those 2 embassies in Africa. It's a ridiculous argument. It isn't going to stop radical Islamic terrorism.
And we have a president in the White House who will not call them Islamic jihadists. He does not want to make a reference to religion and the terrorist activities, which Al Jazeera the other day said the same thing. We will no longer use that term Muslim terrorist.
Isn't it interesting that just as this debate over the administration's refusal to use, the President of France says that France is at war with radical Islam, but this administration won't. And next month they're going to have a summit on combating violent extremism. I think most of that summit is going to consist of heads of state taking the president aside and saying, get with the program, Mr. President. We're at war with radical Islam. Why won't you admit this?
I don't see him changing, though. I don't see at this point how he can. I mean, I guess he could, but I think he's locked and loaded on this issue that he's not changing that view.
I think we saw that in the State of the Union. At the height of the criticism of this president's refusal to admit the obvious, admit who the enemy is, he gave a State of the Union speech where he doubled down on this radical
and a founder
extremism concept.
Yeah, in fact, a founder of one of the American Islam movements also said that Americans, I should say non-Muslims, should hold Muslims' feet to the fire and make sure we all clearly identify that they are distorting our religion. It's not our true religion, but they're distorting it, and we all should recognize and label them for who they are. In fact, that is their foundation. That's the reason they do what they do. They do it in the name of Muhammad, and they look for ways to distort the religion and use it as a reason to attack us and all infidels as they see anyone that does not bow down before them.
Well, I hear that and I understand that, but there are many moderate Muslims who the majority of Muslims who do not believe this.
Correct.
But it's also foolish to say that ISIS is not acting in the name of Islam. And it's also true that there's many Muslim organizations both in this country and abroad who are not doing nearly enough to discourage violent acts of terrorism.
And to that extent, the president continues to refer to ISIS and ISIL, which stands for Islamic State, but he won't use the term. One final question back to Bowie Bergdahl. I hear what you're saying, that he might be a lost soul, and it's very confusing, and I don't know if he's deserted or not, but I know every time I've talked about it on Larry Connor's USA in the evening, I get calls and response from vets who say, I don't like it, I consider him a deserter, and therefore, they use some very strong, harsh terms in dealing with this young man.
Well, I don't know whether he's a deserter or a lost soul. I would sort of give him the benefit of the doubt because we're compassionate people. Looking at the background on his life before he went into the Army, that's just my guess. But look, I'm not a veteran. I'll defer to veterans on where they think they should go. But if I was asked, my view is that we don't leave people behind, and I think this guy is just a lost soul.
All right. Thank you very much for taking time to be with us today.
Great to be here, Larry.
You bet. Frederick Fleitz, a former CIA operative and also the editor of Lignet. That's the Langley Intelligence Group Network. Frederick Fleitz.